All right, good evening. I think we are live. Just want to make sure that the star of the show is able. Barbara, if you're there, are you able to unmute and let me know that you're
Hi, I'm so delighted to be with you tonight.
likewise? I'm glad that we could get you logged in and figured out. Um, I'm happy to share my screen with the presentation. If you'd prefer to do it from your end, just let me know what works, but you should be able to screen share.
Yeah, no, you're good. I'd like to have you drive tonight. That's great.
All right. So we will just give it a minute or two to have a few more people join us. Thank you for those of you that were here promptly at 6. My name is Phil Jago. I'm the coordinator of College and Career Services for the School District of Lancaster. Um, although I have a K through 12 remit, a lot of my work obviously takes place at the high school level, given my tenure as the College and Career Specialist at JP McCaskey, now the coordinator. So this is a topic that I'm really excited um, to share with everybody this evening with our wonderful speaker, Barbara, and I'll let her introduce herself in a few moments. But there is no time like the present for the parents with juniors on the call and certainly sophomores as well. It's a really good time to start thinking about the topic of tonight's presentation. So again, let's just give it a few more moments here. I'm going to bring up the presentation on my screen. Barbara, can everybody? Oh, there you are. Good evening. Everyone hopefully can see what I'm seeing, which is the F&M logo and the wonderful Barbara. So we'll give it one more minute, Barbara, and then I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and
Fantastic.
we'll get cracking.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for the invitation to be with the McCaskey families tonight. I'm really looking forward to this.
So for those of you attendees on the call, if you have questions, I believe the chat or the Q&A or both are open and available. If there's specific questions for Barbara, I'm sure there'll be some time for Q&A at the end. If there's things that are more general or McCaskey related, I can sort of try and be attentive to those as the presentation's going on. But I think we'll have some time for questions at the end. So if you want to, hold those thoughts until we're through, and then we can do some Q&A, that would be great. Barbara, I think we might as well get going. I know that more people registered for this. One of the gift and the curse of modern technology, I think, is that many people will receive the recording of this, even if they're not able to attend. But for those of you who are here in real time with us, thank you for giving us your time this evening. And Barbara, I'll let you introduce yourself and take it away, and I'll be pushing through the slides for you.
I love it. Thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity to talk with our McCaskey students and families. Um, I'm Barbara Connor. I have been in the college admission profession, college counseling profession for over 20 years. I want you all to know that I have spent almost trying to think about how many years. For 12 years, I was director of college counseling at a girls' boarding school in Virginia. For 10 years prior to that, I worked in one of Virginia's large public districts, which is Fairfax County Public Schools. I was there for about 10 years. In my last 7, I was the College and Career Center specialist. Across those 18 years or so, I worked with tens of thousands of students and families as they were preparing for successful college processes. And we're going to talk a little bit tonight about the things that a student and a family can do now that can open opportunities. And we want to talk about those things in a very positive, productive, and relaxed manner because this tends to be a part of life that teenagers describe as potentially stressful, unnerving, frustrating. And I think that we can go a long way in reducing stress if we think ahead of time about the ways that we want to navigate this process. So you'll see throughout our conversation tonight that I'm going to be offering some very specific nuts and bolts, hands-on, you can use these things starting today or tomorrow, tips and ideas that you all as a family can start to talk about. And these are things that, again, in the long run, tend to reduce stress and improve admission outcomes. Having said that, you'll also notice that I've focused in the title screen on a few very specific things that we're going to hit on. In the conversation, we'll talk about other things as well. And then, as Phil mentioned at the end, there will be time for Q&A. And I'm very excited to talk with you all and to hear your questions. So having said all of that, I will begin the presentation by also letting you know that as Director of Recruitment at Franklin and Marshall College, I have had the extraordinary opportunity to live and work in the Lancaster area, and McCaskey is one of the schools that I visit. So I'm particularly delighted to have this opportunity to do this with one of the schools for which I'm a primary reader on the applications when they come in from our McCaskey students. So this is a real joy for me. All right, Phil, let's kick it off and head to the next screen. Thank you so much. So one of the things that I promised you is that as we start to talk about the college process, I'm going to be providing some ideas for you to think about, which absolutely can not only reduce some stress, but they may actually make you think about things slightly differently than what you may already know coming into this process. For some of the McCaskey families, parents attended college. Other families have parents that did not go to college. For some of the families, you may have had an older child who went through this process a few years ago, and you may notice that a lot of things have changed even in these past 3 to 5 years about the way college admission looks. So what I want you to think about is for the student that you currently have who is a current freshman, sophomore, or junior, I want you to really open things up in the way that we're thinking about what does the college admission landscape look like right now? What can we be doing and encouraging our students to do that can help keep things as stress-free as possible while opening up all of the opportunities that we want them to have in this process? So I want you to start by thinking about this one fact. Students are in control of the college admission process for 2/3 of the time. And I'm going to repeat that because many families never really think about it from that perspective. Students are in control of this process 2/3 of the time. So when we think about the student's ability to decide at the beginning of the process which schools they want to research, which schools they may want to visit, which schools they are going to spend some time getting to know, which schools they are going to add to their apply list, which schools are going to make that maybe 5 to 8 schools that they will be submitting applications to. Students have a lot of agency over what that's going to look like with family support, right? And that those family conversations are going to come into play in just a few minutes here. I want to remind you then that that's about 1/3 of the process, and that's at the beginning. Students are back in control of this process for the last third of this process. Once all of the admission decisions come in, and students are looking then at all of the offers from the colleges that have offered them admission, the control in this process is back with the student. And what they are doing is, with family support, making a decision among all of their offers about which of these colleges is the best fit for me as a student, for us as a family, And that certainly is going to be based on academic considerations, what the social life is, leadership development opportunities, opportunities for things like study abroad and research, and absolutely with a component of the financial fit. Is this a school that our family is financially comfortable with? If the fit is in all of those ways positive, the student has those opportunities again at the third, at the end, to be back in control and making those decisions. The only time that the students are not in control of this process is that middle third. And that's because students cannot see the rest of the application pool. So they don't understand necessarily how strong and well prepared a lot of students are for this process. And students and families often are not necessarily privy to things like institutional priorities that may also be helping an admission team shape the class, the community that they are bringing to the campus for the next year. For example, about 14 years ago, there was a college in the Mid-Atlantic that 50 years earlier had been kicked out of the NCAA for some violations, and they had done their penance, and the NCAA was ready to welcome them back with a D1 football program. So one of the institutional priorities for that particular admission committee that year was fullbacks, quarterbacks, and piccolo players, because they were ready to field a football team and a marching band, and they were looking for students who could help fill their institutional priorities. Colleges often have institutional priorities around geography. So you've probably seen a lot of college materials at this time, and you may have noticed that sometimes they're talking about things like, we have students at our college from all 50 states. Well, what you're talking about there is geographic diversity. I will tell you that F&M's class has students this year from 49 states. We did not manage to admit and enroll a student from South Dakota this year. But boy, wouldn't that have been great if we could have said, we have students from all 50 states here. So again, there are some things that happen in that middle third that the student and family will not necessarily have access to. They're not in control at that part, but the admission committee is working to make sure that they are giving a fair read to all of their applicants in the context of what has our board of trustees, what has our president asked us to make sure that we are focusing on as we admit the next class of F&M diplomats here. And that same type of conversation is happening on all college campuses across the country. So for today's conversation, I'm generally going to be talking about things that apply broadly, unless there's something very F&M specific, and I will absolutely let you know that at the time. So one of the things I want you to do is control what you can control. I want you to make sure that as a student in this process, you fully understand your responsibility for being open-minded for that first third, being open to learning about new colleges, new programs, new opportunities, thinking more about things that people are telling you are important in the college process, and then judging, saying, are those things important to me as I'm embarking on this part of the process? I want you to be mindful and thoughtful and in control during that last third, so that when you are making the decision about where you will spend your college years, you are being mindful and in control and making great decisions with the support of your family on which of those wonderful college offers you're receiving is the very best fit for you. So how does that happen? How do we make sure that a student is controlling what they can control, helping to reduce stress, and improving outcomes? And I'm going to tell you that it's actually a little bit easier than many people think. And the idea here is that we ask students to center themselves in this process. That again will feel a little bit countercultural for families that are used to saying, well, we want to apply to schools that US News and World Report, rates in this particular strata, or says that these particular schools are the very best ones. Having worked again with tens of thousands of students, there is no way that somebody's going to tell me that the school ranked 167 might not be the absolute perfect school for a student whose interest is potentially something like fire protection management, where I've had students who were so specific about that program, and they might have the number one program in the country in that particular area. And just because US News and World Report doesn't say it's the number one school, it is absolutely and could be the number one school for a particular student, based on their academic interests and things like that. So, how does a student kind of begin to do this? How do they center themselves in this process? So, this is where this slide is going to come into place for us. I want students to be very open minded, and I want you to be self-focused. This is tough because this is a generation that doesn't like to talk about themselves, and they don't want to seem like, they're look at me, look at me. But this is a process where you are the expert on you. You know yourself best. And if you keep those things inside your head, the admission committee is never going to have a chance to get to know you and to learn those wonderful things about you. So I want you to become comfortable talking about yourself. I want you to become comfortable talking about some of the experiences that you've had. So, as we start to look at a couple of these questions, these are things that I have used over the years to get students to begin this process. So, thinking about things like, what class are you sitting in, that you are so engaged with that you're just never even aware of how fast time is going. And then the bell rings and you have to go and you've been so engaged. I want a student to think critically here. Was it the content? Was it what you were studying that was absorbing you? Or was it something like the way that that professor or teacher was presenting the material? Was it the fact that this is a class where you can be super hands-on and make a real world kind of effort and impact? I want you to begin to think carefully about what's working really well for you in high school, because we're going to want for you to continue looking for opportunities like that when you're looking at the amazing variety of colleges and the way that they teach, the opportunities that they have. Thinking about things like, how would you choose to use a free weekend? I know that's tough because a lot of our students are pretty overscheduled and they often have jobs on the weekends, or they, have family commitments or things like that, which is wonderful. But even if you had a free afternoon, what would you do, without structured activity planned for you ahead of time? Thinking about problems beyond yourself, things that are bigger than you. Is there something in your school, your community, the world that you say to yourself, gosh, this is happening and it shouldn't. I'd love to be able to fix that thing. What is that? And what bothers you about it? And what would you like to see done? Are there things that you're curious about? Do you read books outside of school assignments? What do you pick up that's you're curious about and interested in learning more about? Do you research things online because you're wondering about how something works, or you've heard something and you want to learn more? What do those things look like for you? I know that there are a lot of 50 and 60-year-olds running around who have not yet figured out what they want to be when they grow up. So it's kind of unfair to ask students, what do you want to major in now? What do you want to be doing in 5 or 10 years? But I can tell you, after working with tens of thousands of students, that a lot of teenagers have actually thought about some of those things. And so again, where do you see yourself, in 10 years? What kinds of things, would you love to be involved with after you're through with high school, after you're through with college and when you are out in your real world, in your real life as an adult? What do you want to be doing? These are some general questions that can keep a student centered and thinking about the type of things that this college exploration and application process is going to be asking you over these next 18 months or so. I want you to remember that it is a reflective process, and it is one that is intended to get you not only to focus and think about yourself, but then to be able to articulate those things through essays, short answers, and interviews. And that's why we start here, by keeping yourself at the heart of your process. All right, Phil, can we get the next slide? Thank you. You'll notice that I did not ask you to start looking at websites first, right? I want you to think about you first. And I want you to keep thinking about you, because that's the context by which a college search can not only be relatively stress-free, but actually fun, engaging, and really just a great way to spend some time. So thinking about you and how you learn, how you live, your values, what's important to you, then I'm going to ask you to go ahead and start to research these ideas that a lot of people will jump to first. I want you to do these things, but I need you to do them second, after you've thought about things like how you learn best. So let's take one or two of these. You'll have plenty of time over these next 18 months to really dig into what some of these things mean. All right. So I'm going to jump in with size first, because one of the questions that a lot of teenagers get is, what size college are you looking for? Small, medium, or large? And I will tell you, I feel like that's kind of a ridiculous question, because what it doesn't actually ask is the context for what a small, medium, or large school could mean to your experience there. So when we talk about size, and I'm going to give you a very particular example, and I want you to be open-minded and think about how you learn best. So the first context piece we're going to put into place here is on size. And I want you to think about what your learning experience is in a classroom. Right now, you have probably spent about 11 years in college. I'm so sorry, in high school. I apologize, jumping ahead. You've probably spent about 11 years in high school, in schools, leading you to where you are in high school now. And those classrooms over time have probably had between 20 and 35 people in them in general, right? You may have had a larger class or two, and you may have had a smaller class or two, but we're talking generally in that, say 20 to 35 range. What that generally means is that your teacher is aware of if you're in the room. The teacher is generally teaching in one way to a large group of people, and the assignments that are getting done, placed on you, the assignments that you are turning in, are generally going to be turned around to you within a week or two, because that the volume of papers a teacher has to grade or things like that probably need about that kind of timeline back. You're probably getting a large dose of lecture where the teacher is the sage on the stage. The teacher has the information and is sharing it with you to learn. All right. And you're on that receptive end of things. Okay. When you are looking at college sizes, you will notice that a lot of schools will talk about being a small, a medium, or a large school. When you're looking at large schools, your classroom experience is likely to be more of an auditorium than a specific classroom for at least the first year and maybe the first 2 years. So let's break that down and see what your learning, your classroom experience would feel like if the size you're looking for is a very large university as an institution. So if you think about the last time that you went to a movie theater, probably a multiplex, and let's pretend that as you walk into the multiplex, you've walked into the theater and you look at the seats that are on the floor and you look up and then you realize there's somebody in every single one of these seats. Okay, you want to see this movie, so you're still going to try to figure it out. Well, Barbara Connor, me, I'm magic, so I'm definitely going to be able to do this. And I lift the wall up that separates two of those multiplex theaters. So I've lifted the wall up. Right now, we're in a space that has about 400 seats. And then you realize that over there in row 16, seat K, there's an empty seat. So you go up and you sit in that chair. Great. So you're sitting there with about 400 classmates, and you're looking down at the floor where there is a professor who's going to be lecturing at you for 90 minutes at a time, 3 days a week. That's great. This is where you are if you are in a large university for the classes in your first year and potentially in your first and second year. How well are you engaging in the material that the professor is lecturing up at this auditorium? I want you to think about what that means for you staying focused and engaged with the material, especially if things like this are happening. Maybe the girl sitting on your left is ordering shoes online. Maybe the boy sitting on your right has fallen asleep and is drooling in his backpack. And maybe there are a couple of kids up behind you who are having a side conversation, or somebody's on the phone with someone. I want you to think about, what does it mean to navigate a large university when it comes to academic classes for the first year or two. And this is not me in any way saying large is bad and small is good. These are just different things. And so I want you to understand what part of that experience feels like when you say, I've decided that I want to go to a large university. That's fantastic. Here's what it could mean for you in the way that you manage your research. You're going to want to think about things like, okay, I'm going to have those really big classes, and I'm going to either need to be able to teach myself a lot, and or I need to do two other things. One, I need to form a study group with other people in this class to make sure that I'm not missing out on the information, and we can meet for a fourth or a fifth time each week to make sure we're sharing that. The other thing that's going to be critical is that you use office hours. Office hours are dedicated times when professors on all college campuses, actually, not just the big ones, will dedicate time in their offices every week. They leave the door open and they sit there and they wait for students to come and ask them questions and talk with them. So those are things that you would absolutely need to incorporate into your schedule to make sure that you're making the most of what a very large classroom experience is going to feel like over the course of a full year or potentially two. So again, starting to think about not just, oh, I like things to be smaller, I like things to be large. I want you to think about the context for what that experience is like. When you start to think about location, you want to think about things like, is it important to me to be close to home, or am I ready to be venturing out and being very independent on my own far away? Do I want to be in a place where weather is a consideration? So I will share with you all that over the course of time, I have worked with some truly extraordinary students who just, I mean, they're all amazing, but some of them have just taken things onto different levels. And I worked with a junior Olympian who was a ski racer. So you can imagine that one of her categories for this was she wanted to be where she could be in snowpack most of the year because she wanted to be close to racing slopes. So again, for location for that particular student, there was some very particular criteria that was centered on her and her needs and what she was looking for. I have spoken with students about all of the different ways that the types of things on this list can be very, very important to them as they're thinking about what they want their college years to look like. I have included majors here, and I want to do this with a little bit of a caveat. So for many schools and programs that you all may be researching as you embark on this process, you may see that they're a liberal arts college. They want you to take a broad variety of classes for the first couple of years, and then they're going to ask you to potentially state your major, declare your major in the end of the sophomore year, and then you will focus on the classes in that area in your junior and senior years. So why do I have majors up here right now? This is largely because there are a handful of majors that don't work like the liberal arts process headspace. So, for example, if your interest is nursing, this is a very particular structured major that begins in a cohort with other students. On day one, you're taking a very specific group of courses, and there's not a way in many cases, in most cases, to actually transfer into a nursing cohort because this group that starts together on day one is moving through those courses together. So if nursing is something that you are interested in, it's important that you talk to your counselors and make sure that they know that you're looking for schools that offer very strong nursing programs. You want to double check things like how many are in the cohort that'll be accepted this year here. You want to ask them things like, where do the nursing majors at this school do their clinical rotations? So you'll have an idea of the hospitals, the clinics, the research facilities that those nursing students have an opportunity to use, visit, and attend while they're in that particular program. Another major that's important to understand at the very beginning of this, if you're considering this, is architecture. Again, architecture is one of those majors that's structured from the very beginning, and it tends to be another major that's hard to transfer into later, depending on the college or the university program. For most other majors, they are largely broadly available. There are some schools that will ask you to declare your major as you are applying to them because they're going to read you for that specific major. And when you're admitted to their school, you're admitted to that major and not any other major. Some universities and colleges allow you to state a second major interest area. And if you don't qualify for the first one you list, they will read you for the second one. At the vast majority of liberal arts colleges, you are being admitted to the college and you will not be declaring your major until the end of your sophomore year. So you have time to do that. I wanted to bring this up because this is another one of those areas where, depending on who you are and what your goals are, you may want to take some of these things into consideration as you're doing your research in that first third of this process. Phil, I want to take a breath here. I've been talking for a long time. I don't know if there are any specific questions that have come up that we can answer, or if we are ready to continue moving through slides.
Well, let's take a look, and by all means take a breath, because that I don't want you to lose your voice. This is really good information, and it is rich and it is deep. We don't have anything specific in the chat or the Q&A. For those of you on the call, if you do have questions, feel free to use either of those functions. But for now, it looks like we are good to press on. So
awesome. This is fantastic. When we talk about things like diversity, diversity is obviously a huge topic, and this can represent, again, as I mentioned earlier, things like geographic diversity. You want to think about, who is it that you will be in classrooms with? Who will I be in my dorms with? Who will I be eating lunch with? Who am I learning from in my small study groups? What about the diversity of voices in the professors that teach in this place? What are those opportunities to meet and know people from all around the world? Will I get to meet and get to be friends with international students? How does that work on a particular college or university campus? So lots and lots of ways to really dig into each of these areas in ways that are important to you. I do want to mention something quickly about the last 2 points here. On research opportunities, you want to think about your opportunities. When you look at the research page for a college, sometimes they will say things like, X university has $120 million in research opportunities each year. As you continue to read, they may say things like, our postdoc and PhD candidates get, the primary choices on these things. Our master's candidates get, the second choice, and then everything that's left goes to our bachelor's degree candidates. And bachelor's degree candidates would be the first level of college that you all are talking about heading toward. So when you look at places that offer bachelor's degrees, masters, PhDs, postdocs, you want to remember that you're going to have research opportunities. In some cases, you might need to wait until the junior or senior year, depending on how it plays out for choices on that. I do also want to play up schools like mine, where you will have research opportunities on a campus like F&M's literally from day one. So if you are working with a professor, or you get to be in somebody's class and you're really excited to know about the type of research that that professor is working on, it is easy to walk up to the professor and say, I'd like to learn more about the research you're doing. Do you have any openings on your research team? And then, you get into those types of conversations in a more open and early time frame on a campus that does not have PhD candidates and things, who are often having extraordinary research opportunities, but it just sometimes means that the younger students have to wait until a little bit later. Study abroad can be a phenomenal way, not only to learn personally and develop yourself as a global citizen, it's also a tremendous opportunity to push yourself and stretch in some new and different ways. There are lots of students who say, oh yeah, I'd like to do study abroad. I think I'll do that in my junior year. And that's fantastic. At most colleges and universities, study abroad is available generally to students across different majors. There are some majors that in some places, and again, I'm speaking in broad generalities for today, this is why your research is really important. Let's say, for example, that you've decided you want to be an organic chemistry major, or you want to be a mechanical engineering major. There are some colleges and universities where those particular programs like students to take all of their classes in their majors on their own campus. So some schools and some majors may be a little bit more difficult to do study abroad, just depending on some of the choices. And I'm not saying that to put that down at all, but just as you're doing your research, just be aware that some schools have different expectations. For study abroad and for students who are interested in becoming more globally aware and increasing their passports to be a global citizen and all of those things, at a school like Franklin and Marshall, many of our students study abroad. Over 50% of our students will do that. A number of our students will actually do it twice. We offer an opportunity called IF&M, where students in their very first semester here can actually study abroad with F&M faculty on our campus in Bath, England. It's a deliberate and very intentional small cohort of about 14 students that get to do that first. They come back and join their class in the spring of the freshman year. And then they have an opportunity, if they would like, to study again in the junior year. So some students who really love that idea and want to do it twice are able to do that. So again, different schools, different opportunities. These are things to be aware of as you're moving through your research. Okay, Phil, let's see what's next. All right. So I've mentioned the word research a couple of times. And what I want you to know and be delighted about is that while COVID was challenging and difficult in 1,000 ways, one of the things that it forced colleges to do is to become more robust in the way that they offered information online and on their research, on their web pages. So doing your research on the computer is actually much more efficient and productive now than it has ever been. So students can see not just a list of majors or a list of classes or a list of clubs, but students are actually able to engage with videos, with real life virtual tours, professors panels, student life panels. There's so many webinars being offered these days. There are lots of ways for you as students to broaden your knowledge about individual colleges through your computer and taking the time to do that. If you are a lacrosse player, I will bet you that a lot of the time you're going to be spending is looking at the athletics page, looking at the team stats, looking at the coaches' statements, thinking about things like, will this place be the place that I can find my team, my people, my college home? And if that identity to you as an athlete is a big piece of that, again, you're going to want to make sure that your research includes things like that. There's going to be information on the NCAA guidelines on when the timing is right for you to reach out to a coach, when can coaches respond. There's going to be a lot of information you would find there in general, but you're going to be able to find college specific athletic teams informations pretty robustly available to you as well. And again, I'm using athletics here just as one piece of this to say whatever is important to the student, you're going to want to make sure that you're looking at that type of information at each of the colleges that you are learning about online. If it is possible for you to visit college campuses in person, this is an extraordinary opportunity because there is a certain personality, there's a certain sense of the school's culture, their school spirit, whether you feel welcome there, if you feel safe as you're kind of walking through the area, and you feel really engaged that this place could be your college home for these 4 years. Some of that you'll sense doing some online research, but sometimes visiting the campuses, if you are able, allows you to get a strong sense of this. In Pennsylvania, we are incredibly lucky. This is a college-rich state. It's one of the strongest in the nation, and there are hundreds of college campuses that are available to you within a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour drive that you can visit and find. If you are doing this research online and then it leads to you deciding that you want to visit, I will share that you need to make sure you understand what McCaskey's policies are if you're going to miss class or miss a day of school to visit college campuses. Most high schools have some sense of guidelines or prearrangement or forms that you need to do. So you'll want to make sure you understand what's expected of you so that you don't run into an unexcused absence situation. Having said all of that, what I will suggest is if your grades are strong and you're in good standing and your counselor and your family feels like it is worth you missing a day of academics, it is nice to be able to see the college when classes are in session and when students are there, because you're actually going to get a stronger sense of what that place really feels like when the student body is actually on the college campus. That does not mean that if those other things are not in place and you're not able to do that, that it's not worth seeing a college campus on the weekend or in the summer. I would absolutely encourage families to do that as well. You can imagine a little bit about what the school spirit might add to that feeling, but being able to walk in buildings, walk down the path, eat in the dining hall, visit the library. These are all wonderful ways that you can, as you're taking the campus tour and listening to the campus information session, have that sense of what this place could be and could offer to you during those college years. So again, I want you to remember that at this point in the process for the research, you're in that first third, you're in charge. It is your responsibility to be doing that research in ways that are meaningful to you so that later you're going to have made some very good investments of your time, and you'll know which of those schools you're researching are going to make it onto your apply list. Again, hopefully in that goal of 5 to 8 colleges that you have researched that are great fits for you. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm going to start talking about demonstrated interest with the statement that not all colleges use demonstrated interest. We call this DI. Demonstrated interest is literally what it suggests. This student has indicated some kind of interest in our college. When colleges are using this, they're generally colleges that say students who want to be here are the students we would love to have here. We know that those are students who are going to engage on our campus in the ways that they have engaged on their high school campuses by being involved in student life, by being top scholars in their classrooms, by being those students who are asking questions in a classroom and talking to their teachers and professors. They're the leaders sometimes on campus. These are students who have expressed that something about the way our college works is really intriguing to them. So I have always promised students that I have worked with that if I ever know ways that I can help you navigate this process successfully, I will always share those things with you. So I'm about to share some things with you that you might not hear in other places, but I'm going to tell you that, like it or not, we actually will begin knowing a lot of information about you. And so I want to tell you how to navigate the system if you're looking at colleges that use demonstrated interest as one of their factors in the admission process. So you have probably, juniors, you've probably begun receiving lots of emails from colleges. Okay, a lot of the time you're probably tempted to delete, 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 delete. I haven't heard of that place. I don't know anything about that college. This one's not that interesting to me. Okay. Number one, be open-minded and consider opening emails from 2 colleges you've never heard of each week between now and the end of this process. You might be surprised that you might learn that the type of programs, the type of campus, the academic interests, and the social life that's awaiting you, all of those things could be in abundance at a college you don't know about yet, right? There are 5,000 colleges in this country. I have heard of most of them because this is the work I've done for 20 years. I have toured more than 350 college campuses in my life. Are there still colleges that I've never heard of? Absolutely. So again, there's always something to learn, and you're in that research learning part of the process. So take this part of it seriously. So number one, have you opened the emails from colleges? Maybe, maybe not. If you opened an email, did you click on a link for information that interested you? Okay, I'm going to encourage you to do that. Have you had a chance to visit the campus? Have you taken the tour? Did you sign up for a college campus interview? All right. Each of these things can be counted by different schools in different ways. So, for example, you might be interested to learn that when we as a college send you information, I can actually see whether or not you opened that email. I can see that on my side of the process. I can also see, and this feels a little creepy, it's a little bit like Big Brother, but again, I've always promised if I know things that can help students, I'm going to tell them. I can see if you've clicked on things like academic interests, and I can see if you then went and clicked on something like, I don't know, philosophy or environmental science or animal science, like, whatever those things are. So again, if you know that you're researching schools and on their admission page it said we use demonstrated interest as a factor in our admission decisions, pay attention to the things that that school is sending you, because you are able to demonstrate interest back to the school by doing fairly simple things like opening the email, clicking on things that are interesting to you. Again, registering for a campus tour, you'll do that online. You'll go to the page that says visit us or plan your next trip to see us. You'll click on the little calendar. They'll tell you which days and times are available, and you'll sign up for an appointment to visit them and for an information session and a campus tour. And I strongly recommend that you do both of those things. Let the college tell you the wonderful things about themselves. When you do that, you'll begin to navigate the system. So When you're on the tour, you'll have an opportunity to ask tour guides questions about the student experience, right? When you're on a campus, feel free to pick up the school newspaper. They'll be in bins all over the place. They're free. That's going to tell you a lot about what's going on that campus, right? Please do not wear high-heeled shoes that are brand new and uncomfortable. You will be miserable, and this place that could have felt like the most wonderful campus match for you is going to feel pretty lousy if you're sore and painful and you're just ready to get back to the car. So wear comfortable shoes, be in comfortable clothes, present yourself well. You want to make sure that you are comfortable during the campus tour. If it's snowing, sleeting, pouring, hot, cold on the day that you visit, please know those things happen on all college campuses. Try as best you can not to let that have an impact on you, but try to make sure you remember not every day on that campus is going to be like that. All right. And again, not all colleges offer college interviews, but you will see whether they encourage or require or suggest that students take them. You will also generally be able to see whether they are using the campus interview as one of the factors in an admission decision, or if they're offering them informationally for students to give them one more chance to learn something about that college. Colleges count different things as demonstrated interest, and the amount of weight that demonstrated interest has across campuses varies widely. I want you to think about demonstrated interest as something that you can use to strengthen your relationship with a school. It is perfectly fine for you to email the admission counselor that is listed for your school or your area. You may email them and ask them questions. That certainly is another way for you to show that you are paying attention to that college and that you're interested in learning more. Should you choose to do that, a couple of suggestions. I would not ask them things like, do you have an English major? Those are things you could easily find out online by yourself. You might ask them things about traditions on campus and what their favorite tradition is. You know, something that's interesting, but that you necessarily wouldn't have been able to find online on your own. And the other thing I do want you to remember about DI is that it will heal the sick, it will not raise the dead. And what I mean by that is for a student who is strong in all other ways, demonstrated interest can be the point where that student sets themselves apart from other equally strong students. For a student who has not prepared themselves well academically, or if there are other issues that are just not a great match for the admission process, demonstrated interest is not going to overcome things like bad grades or skipping school or things that would tend to say to a college that the student has not been academically engaged in their high school experience. Okay, I hope that that's helpful. And as we move through, if you all have questions about this, again, please feel free to let us know as we move toward that. All right, let's check out the next slide. Fantastic. So everything I have talked with you about so far is leading you up for essay writing, right? And this is one more thing. Because you're keeping yourself at the heart of this process and you're reflecting on the things that are important to you, and then you're thinking about the college characteristics and how those are going to play out and be important and successful for you, you are going to find that if you do a college interview, you've actually gone a long way toward being very prepared for this. So I would often say to my athletes, as I've worked with them over the years, would you ever think about showing up for the big game on Saturday, having missed all of the practices that week? And you get this very strong head shake. No, my coach would never put me in to the big game if I had not been there for practice all week. And I want you to think about this college process in that same way. So you're not going to walk into a college interview cold. You're going to walk into the college interview having thought about things, right? You're going to prepare for this by thinking to yourself this one question. By the time this interview is over, what do I want the interviewer to understand about me? What can I talk about that gives more information than what's the bio data that's in the application that I'm submitting through Common App or Coalition App or one of those. What kinds of experiences have I had that will help the interviewer understand how well prepared I am to be successful and how I can contribute if I'm admitted to this college. So here are some really, really predictable types of college interview questions. So I want you to think about them ahead of time. Notice I did not say, I need you to memorize the answers for these 6 or 7 things. Don't memorize anything, but just think about it ahead of time so that when the person asks a question, you can more easily come up with answers and specific examples that help you. So one of the things that they'll often say is, do you consider yourself a leader? Talk about how you have been a leader during high school. And for some students, their first thing is, like, I've never been elected to anything. I was never the head of any club, or I didn't do any of those things. So one of the things to think about is, how have you shown leadership formally or even informally? Are you one of the strongest babysitters in your neighborhood or community? That's leadership. People are trusting you with the lives of their small children. So you can talk about things in a different way if it seems like that particular exact label isn't one you necessarily would have thought about. You can think more broadly about those things. A challenge you've overcome. Here, they're not looking for you to hash out details. Here, what they're looking at is, how resilient are you? What did you learn about yourself in the example? And how did you use that experience to make better decisions in the future, or to become stronger and more resilient as you face successive challenges? All right. These are some kinds of things that are great for students to think about, again, not only before they go into an interview, but also leading us right into this next part of the presentation. And so if you'll go ahead and flip to the next page here, there we go. You are the expert on you. Your college essay is your voice in this process. So again, the types of reflection and research that you're doing at the beginning, thinking about questions that help you prepare to be strong for an interview, are all the types of thinking and reflection that are going to help you write a very compelling essay that helps the admission reader understand a little bit more about who you are. So you will notice that I am saying in bullet number 2, don't read the prompts first, okay? And again, I'm going to say that one more time. When you start to think about this process, do not run to the Common App essay prompts and read through all 7 and then go, I don't know what to write about. All right, I'm going to help you flip this. You're going to stay in control, managing the message and the narrative you want to write. I promise you, because I know the folks at Common App really well, and they're always going to include the one at the bottom that says topic of your choice. Okay, so you can truly write your college essay about any specific experience that you would like to share, always remembering that the topic is actually you. They want to learn more about who you are, what you've done, what you've achieved, what your values are, what your goals are. And then by the time they finish reading, you want them to understand, wow, this is a kid who's really doing interesting thought, and this would be a great student for us to bring. Okay. You want to make sure that you are writing well. You're not going to get dinged for one typo. And, they're not out here to edit your work. We want you to write well, write clearly. The syntax, the phrasing, the experience, these should all be in your own voice. So I'm going to say something, because I know we've got a lot of parents on this call and parents who will be watching the recording later. If your student asks you to read their college essay draft, I would really love for you to do that without a pen in your hand. I would like for you not to write physically on what the student is giving you. I don't want you to edit it in Google Docs. I want you to read it and then talk to the student about what you read, what you learned, and suggest perhaps ideas for tightening up certain sections or areas. The minute that adults start writing on these papers, our students are so in the process of how they do school that they're automatically going to take the suggestions of adults. And immediately what you've done is you have changed 17-year-old vocabulary, syntax, and phrasing into the phrasing and the writing of a 40 or a 50-year-old person. And if you don't think we can tell the difference of exactly when and where and how often that happens in essays, you should think about that again. So it is really important that the student is writing in their own voice. It is very important that they have that opportunity to share what they would like to share with the admission committee. Once you've given this some really good thought, then go look at those essay prompts and you'll find the one on there that you would really love to write toward. All righty, last slide. There we go. Phil, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I hope that the topics that we've spoken about, and I hope that the examples that we've shared allow the students and the families to really understand that they have a lot of agency and a lot of control in this process. And I hope that some of these specific things help some of our McCaskey students to reduce their stress and improve admission outcomes in the process.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much for your wisdom, your insight. I mean, I've been in this college access world for almost 10 years now, and I learned things this evening that I didn't know. And I think having the insight of someone on the admissions side of the table as well, who's willing to share some of those trade secrets is very helpful, and we're grateful to you for that. I don't see any questions, which is obviously a testament to how comprehensive you were with what you explained to the people on the call. For those of you that may have questions that come to you later, or if your students have questions, you have my contact information through Synergy, which is how you probably learned about this webinar. Also, please remind your students that the Future Ready Center in both JP McCaskey and McCaskey East is an open office for all students. So we work heavily with seniors, and obviously these next 3 weeks, seniors are on our minds. But juniors, this is a really wonderful time to just stop in and meet with us and make a plan for your summer. Get some of those college visits in, get a first draft of the college essay under your belt. So again, now is no time like the present. But thank you all for taking the time out of your evening to be here. Thank you again to you, Barbara. I'm sure we'll bring you back into the rotation in the future for more tips and tricks and ugly secrets from the world of college admissions. Thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful evening and enjoy your weekend when we get there in a few days' time.
Thanks all so much. Take care.